Happy Easter from my garden to yours. Um, First of all, I want to say thank you to all the new can't speak this morning. To all the new subscribers, I really appreciate it. If you've watched the videos and you haven't yet subscribed, I really appreciate it if you would reach out there and hit that subscribe button and follow along this journey with me. Again, I just appreciate it. I'm trying to give as many tips and tricks that I know and that I've learned over the years of gardening. And today we are actually going to be talking about indeterminate tomatoes. I know tomatoes are kind of a beaten subject by now, but there's just so much to know because it's really depending on the varieties that you're growing and things like that and what works best in your area. So today I'm going to be talking to you about indeterminate tomatoes, and we're going to be pruning my plants. My plants are at a great stage. They've been in the ground for about a little over 2 weeks now, more or less 2 weeks, and they've gotten lots of suckers on them. They've gotten a really nice size to them, and a good bit of them have already started flowering. So I will show you what that looks like as well, because there is a difference in some of the flowering that they do. You can have one that has a single flower, and then you can have one that's it's kind of like a fused flower. It's more than one flower together, and those are the ones that make those real big. Um, I think it's like a cat face tomato or something like that. But I'm really too big on those, and I try not to grow too many of those varieties that do that. But I do have a couple in my garden. My main thing is I like to use the saucing tomatoes and just very few of the fresh slicing tomatoes, because I don't like I said, I don't really eat them. I just make them for use them for sauces, but my kids like them, so that's the reason I grow them. Again, indeterminate tomatoes. All right, on indeterminate tomatoes, they can be grown a couple different ways. I've mentioned to you before, like all the little hairs along the stem of the tomato can be eventually turn into roots if you plant them deep enough, and that's going to be on indeterminate or determinate tomatoes with that one. But as far as pruning goes, you want to prune your indeterminate tomatoes to determine how their growth is going to happen. My particular garden, what I'm doing is I'm pruning down to one stem. And what I mean by that is that any suckers that are on, I'm going to show you in just a minute what a sucker is and how I prune, but any suckers that are on the tomatoes can eventually turn into a stem of their own and produce its own fruit. However, the reason I'm pruning down to one stem is because the tomato plants in my garden only have so much space, and that's all that I'm allowing them. So I'm keeping them on the one stem. That way they focus all of their energy, all of their food, everything's concentrated into one small area on that tomato, and it's concentrated on that one stem and flowering that one stem. So that's my goal with this. Now, in pruning, what I can do is as I prune and the suckers get bigger, then I can take those and make new plants. And I will show you later on in the season how to do that, because none of the suckers on my plants are currently big enough, really. Well, I may have one that I could show you, but it's probably about this long, but I'll show you in just a second. So come on in. I'm going to bring you down low to show you my current tomato plants and how I prune them. And I'm going to go ahead and warn you, it looks a little harsh what I'm doing, but I promise you it's for the better of my plant, not only for the health of my plant, but also to go down to that one stem method. So come on in while I show you that. Alrighty, bringing you down to tomato level so you can see what's going on here. You can see this little leaf sticking out right here in between this little elbow of the tomato plant. Those are what we call suckers. This is what has the potential to turn into its own part of the plant or into a stem of the plant. And as you can see on mine, I want this one stem to be the only thing that's growing. So that's what I'm going to concentrate on. And anything, leaves or the suckers, for right now, I'm going to clip anything below this area right here, because I don't want my plant to get sick. So I don't want anything when it rains, I don't want that to splash up and hit my leaves, because that's how the plants get sick is when you have that splashback coming from when it's raining or you're watering or something. It comes from the soil and up and hits the plant. Even though I have straw mulch down, this is a really good practice to go by. So it's something I've done for years and years. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do now. I'm just going to go through here. Starting at the bottom, y'all. I had a few at the bottom. But I'm just going to take and I'm going to cut the leaf and the sucker. So you see I cut them both at the same time, all the way up. So what that's leaving me one, two, about 3 leaves and then the top part of the plant. I could even go as far to go ahead and cut this one off, which I think I may go ahead and just do that. Yeah. So I'm left basically with just this little top of my plant. And I'm happy with this little top of my plant. So this is going to grow up real big and strong. I'm actually going to get some string here in a few minutes and I'm going to tie this off to my trellises right here. That way it's not flopping back and forth. But again, you see there's no suckers that are too small to go ahead and pull off. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that one off as well. So that is done. And then I have 2 more that I'm going to go ahead and sit here and do in front of you. And then I'll just put you on a time lapse while I go through the others. And then I will show you the sucker that I was talking about that is big enough to root if you want a new tomato plant. So let me get up, go through these really quick. And as you can see, I'm just snipping the sucker and the leaf. So, and then some people do compost their tomato leaves and plants, and some don't. I do compost mine. It's mostly this early in the game I will compost them, just because I know there's no diseases or anything like that, so I'm not worried about that part of it. So let me show you. All right. Okay. So see, that was really quick work with that. So that's going to be all that I do, and I'm going to go ahead and get all of those done, and I'll bring you right back in a second. Alrighty, guys. So I've gotten everything pruned off, set how I want it. Now I just have to go back through with my string. I'm just going to put a loose little hoop around my plant and hook it onto my trellis with some burlap string that I have in my greenhouse. And I'm going to do that to each one of them. We're expecting some storms this afternoon, so I don't want them kind of flapping back and forth. So I want to give them a little bit of stability with that. Oops. Sorry, I've seen a sucker I missed. So, all right. But anyway, back to the suckers of the plants. Um, this is one of the bigger suckers that I had on one of my plants. And as you can see, it already started to have the top of what would be its own tomato plant. What you can do, if you can use this small one like this, or you can wait till they're a little bit bigger. But what you can do is once you cut it, see here. Put it like once you cut it, you can stick this in water, and all these little hairs right here will turn into roots, and you can plant this like a brand new tomato plant. And so, whatever variety you have, you will have a true to form variety of that particular plant. In this case, that was actually a Black Beauty sucker. No, was that a Black Beauty? Yeah, that was a Black Beauty sucker that I just cut. So, if I wanted to have more than just the four Black Beauty if I wanted to have more than just the four Black Beauty plants that I have right here, I could let one of the suckers grow, put it in water, have it rooted, and then just have a spare if I need it, or I can add it to another area in my garden, or if I have somewhere else that I want to put tomatoes, I can add it that way. This also works really good as long as you have healthy, happy plants. That works really good later in the season. If you want to snip those suckers off, root them, and if you have a dead plant that's coming along, then you can pull that dead plant out, put that new plant in its place. So, trying to think, is that about? Yeah, that's about it with the tomato suckers. I mean, they're really great. The tomato is actually a really awesome plant. Again, I don't like tomatoes, but it is what it is with that. But I love growing them, so that's the great thing, and they're so versatile. And again, just the only thing is to make sure that you know what type of tomato you are growing, whether it's a determinate or an indeterminate. The determinate tomatoes you do not want to prune those determinate tomatoes. You really want to keep the indeterminates pruned and growing up a tall trellis. A few years ago, I actually had some tomato plants that got to about probably about 8 foot, 8 to 9 foot tall. They outgrew my trellis, and I ended up having to hook a cattle panel over the top. I use cattle panel trellises, but I ended up having to hoop one around like you would do an arch and grow the tomato down the other side of that one. And I got um, a lot of produce off of those plants. So I had a freezer full of tomatoes. So, but they're really great, and as long as you take care of them, they will continue to grow and grow and grow. So our biggest thing here in Central Mississippi is diseases. Again, that's one of the reasons that I'm mulching my garden. I have mulched before, and then I've also planted tomatoes without mulching. And when you plant tomatoes with mulching, they tend to last a little bit longer and they don't get as sick as quickly as opposed to not mulching. Because again, that mulch is like, or the straw is like a protective layer from the soil to the plant to allow it to stay a little drier on the top side and not allow that soil that could have different sicknesses or whatever in it to hit up and hit the plant. So that's one of the reasons I'm really starting to stick with the straw method of mulching over and making sure that everything's covered in a nice level. And that way, we're going to see how well my tomatoes do this year. So, on to flowers. Now, I'm going to bring you in close and show you a couple of flower instances because I have one flower that's opened, and it is actually two flowers that have been infused, but then I also have a few flowers that are singles, and I'm going to show you the difference. Alrighty, this is one of my Black Beauties. Black Beauties for me, Black Beauties, I believe, and Granderos have been the first to actually have flowers in my garden. So those I know planting them early, getting them out in the ground as soon as I can really benefits them, so they can go ahead and start flowering and living a happy life. Now, Black Beauties do have the uh, tendency to fuse flowers, and this is what I'm talking about. This is actually two separate flowers that have fused together. And you can see how big that is. This would have been the center line of the flower, but it has fused together, and this will make one of those really huge tomatoes, and I believe it's called cat facing, if I'm not mistaken. If it's not, I'll write it on the screen, but I believe it is called cat facing. That are real ugly, and I'll try to put a picture in the screen too of what I'm talking about. And then you have your regular size tomatoes. Now these flowers right here, these are looking really nice. They're not interfused. They're one single flower each. Now some people will take and pick off these interfused flowers just because they tend to take a lot of energy from the plant, and then sometimes the tomato isn't, it's not as pretty to look at. I guess you could say it's still a good tomato, but it's just not as pretty to look at. I leave them just because I like the look of them and they're pretty cool looking to me. So, but that's the interfused flower, and then these smaller ones are going to be your regular flowers. So, and then we have another one set right over here. You can tell the difference. You see how, let's see, you can see how big this one is right here compared to that one right there. So this is going to be, I believe this one's going to be, nope, that, never mind, that's not. But these are single flowers. So you can see that single flower opposed to this fused flower. So that way you can see the difference of those. And like I told y'all, these 4 plants right here are my Black Beauties, and they are, all 4 of them already have beautiful little flowers on them. So, and see, here's one more that's fused right there. You can see what it looks like starting off. So I know this one is fused together. So, and another instance to show you is like where you'll see these leaves right here, these 2 leaves right there, they're kind of side by side. They should have split off. So that's how, another way I can tell is by the split in those petals, not the petals, but the leaves on the side of the plant flower right there. So alrighty, so that's all about the flowers. And again, these Black Beauties, and then I have some Granderos that are over in that other bed right over there that are already starting to flower. And now I know those 2 varieties really like the cooler weather. They're happier with the cooler weather, and they start flowering sooner with the cooler weather. So I'm really going to focus on these as my early variety, and then my porters, Amish paste, things like that, those I know I can get in a little bit later, and they'll just flower throughout the summer. Alrighty, everyone, it is actually starting to sprinkle here, so I think I'm going to go ahead and go. I got a couple more things I need to get done outside before the rain actually hits. So I really appreciate you joining me today and this little talk about tomatoes. If you have any additional questions, or you want to know anything in particular about tomatoes or peppers, or any ideas for videos that you would like to see moving forward, just shoot me a comment down in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to get that out for you. Until then, from my garden to yours, happy garden and have a great one, and a happy Easter.